webinar series 2017. We should have started in January, but we were kind of lazy, I guess, after doing the webinar for the whole year in 2016. But I'm happy we started, and today we'll be talking about what's new with vRealize Operation 6.5. So today the session would talk about the new features which have been introduced by VMware in this product, and we'll talk about different use cases which they can help solve, and we will also look at a demo at the end of the presentation to go live through these features. So with that, let me just go through a couple of housekeeping items. We'll do a Q&A at the end of the session, which basically means that I'll open up the phone lines for everyone to speak. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can use the chat window, and we'll be happy to answer those. Simon, who's with me, will be helping us answering those questions while I'm speaking today. The session is recorded, so in case you have a lunch or a meeting to run into, don't worry about it. We'll post this on our blogs in the coming week. And all participants are on mute, so if you have any questions, use the chat window. And this time around, we have made a feedback form for you. So, I know that line was dangling last time, and we never had a feedback form. But this time around, we have a feedback form, and we would love to get your feedback on these sessions and anything which you want to see in these sessions going forward. And please use that SurveyMonkey link. I'll flash that link at the end of the session as well for you to go ahead and use it. But the more you input, the more output you would get out of the system. So make sure you throw in your feedback. With that, let me introduce you to the speakers. I'll start with Simon. You want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, my name is Simon Eady. I work for a consultancy in the UK called Extrovert. We specialize in virtualization, predominantly VMware. At the moment, I do a lot of vROps stuff, hence the webinar and Stone, but that's not the only thing I do. vExpert, vMug Leader, and if you want to reach out to me at any time, best place to grab me on is Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SimonEady. That's it.
Thank you, Simon. My name is Sunny. I work for VMware as a senior member of technical staff. To simplify, I'm an engineer with VMware, and I work with the vRealize operations group. I was a consultant all my life before I moved here into the headquarters of VMware, and now directly work on the product. And I'm happy to share through webinar series that I've been doing. And if you need to get in touch with me, you can use my Twitter handle, or you can reach out on any of the social media platforms, and would be happy to connect. All right. With that, let's move on and quickly look at what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about vRealize Operations Manager 6.5 today, and pretty much we'll be going through the highlights in terms of what has been released in the 6.5 release, which was done in November last year. I know we are late to the party, but we will try to cover up or give you some goodies in terms of what new features are there and how you can use them immediately in your environments. Let's start. Let's just keep going and get to the first release highlight. The first one is the additional monitoring capabilities, which basically means that now you will be able to monitor more out of your existing vROps environment. When I say this, it basically means that you can now increase the memory to increase the scope of monitoring within the same environment, unless you hit the next sizing option which VMware gives. So if you remember, you have different sizing options from small, medium, large, and now we have a new sizing option called extra large. But if you want, you can go ahead and just increase the memory within your existing vROps deployment. Let's say you're running medium and you want to increase, and you're seeing that memory is being tanked out, you can actually go ahead and increase the memory on your existing vROps nodes and get more out of them. So that basically gives you some more opportunity to go ahead and right-size your environment for monitoring your infrastructure correctly. And at the same time, do not really have to go to the next form factor altogether. That is fully supported now. And at the same time, you need to make sure that when you do this equally on all the nodes of your cluster. That's something to keep in mind. EPOps or endpoint operations, you would see that VMware has been focusing on getting EPOps as a mainstream solution for endpoint monitoring. And this is a very good step with this particular release, where you can now upgrade the vROps agents directly from the admin UI. You don't really have to write scripts or codes or do it manually across all your vROps agents in your environment. You can actually use vROps admin UI and straight away go ahead and upgrade your vROps agents from there. Some enhanced troubleshooting capabilities have been introduced. One of them is quickly correlating logs and metrics in context itself, which basically means that now you have vROps and Log Insight working together on a single UI or a single pane of glass, where you can now look at metrics and logs together to see how you want to troubleshoot specific issues. And this is a game changer in my opinion, because you don't have to really go ahead and look at two different tools to solve a single problem, but you can actually solve everything while you are on the vROps screen itself. And that basically gives you some context around logs as well. Apart from that, you can do some custom metric groups now, which is more around troubleshooting. I will talk about this and show you how you do this. But the relevance of this particular feature is wherein you as an administrator knows what are the metrics you want to keep a look on, and hence you can develop your own KPIs and group them together so that on a single click you can basically list all those KPIs for any object in your environment, which basically means that now you don't have to scramble through the UI to figure out what metrics you want to look at if a particular problem is happening. You can just group them together in one go, and once you've done that, the setting is persistent across reboots and persistent across different objects. So if you do the setting for a virtual machine, you can see those metrics for all the virtual machines in the environment grouped together. And I'll show you that during the demo. There are new collaborative options which are available within the vROps, within the new release of vROps, and one of them is an ease of export and import of custom groups. I know this is a big one because I've been working with a lot of customers there. They have multiple deployments of vROps, and for them to painstakingly create custom groups every time they're deploying a new instance is pretty painful. And hence, with this release, you can actually just export custom groups out of one deployment and import them onto another deployment. And this could also be used for a backup use case for that matter. What it also helps you do now is that if you have content such as dashboards or reports which are based on custom groups, then you can actually go ahead and do everything together by exporting out from one instance and importing them without doing any kind of manual work to rebuild those dashboards. And the feature I see will become more popular with this is ease of sharing custom dashboards. So we have a Git repository now where you can share your custom dashboards which you have created, and similarly you can view what others have created and import them in your environment. If we get time at the end of the session, we'll probably go ahead through some of those options. The last option, or the last thing on the slide, is about costing. So as Log Insight has come closer to vROps, similarly the VRBC or vRealize, a business for cloud, is also a click button within vROps now. And I would show you certain demos where you can actually now look at the costs along with the operations and logs for a particular object right on the vROps screen itself. So that's something which was asked by a lot of customers, and I'm glad that VMware has worked towards that and got them real together. Simon, anything which you like the most out of these, or have you heard about use cases from customers where they want these features?
Yeah, so to pick a couple, certainly with some customers I've been talking to recently, the extra large node size is going to be super useful for some of the larger customers who don't want to have 16 node clusters but wanted the increased density of their existing 8 node clusters. So going extra large where they have the capacity in their management clusters, that was a big yes. Also, what was hugely attractive was the integration with Log Insight. A lot of people are very keen on Log Insight. They really like it. So that integration, not just at the high level, but also at the object level, was really, really cool too. So those are two options I know customers are already telling me they really like.
Awesome, great. I do have some more general improvements on the product side as well, which I'm going to talk about today. I'll just quickly populate them on the screen right now. And the first one is around the scale limitation for predictive DRS. So if you've used predictive DRS with vROps, you would know that there was a scale limitation of 4,000 VMs per cluster. I've not seen a lot of clusters with those many VMs, but now that has been removed. So hence you can have as many VMs as you want, or as a vSphere cluster supports, and that will be all supported by predictive DRS as well, which is kind of awesome. So you'll be able to do placements, short-term placements across your clusters, or within your clusters, or across your clusters as well. And with PDRS, of course, you can do those placements within the cluster even before an issue hits. So that's something which is huge. We did speak about PDRS in the last session which we did. So if you want to learn more about it and see how it works, then I would direct you to that particular session. There are certain changes on the global settings you might want to know about. The one which is here is about deleted objects, action history, and symptom alerts. Out of the box with new deployments of 6.5, VMware has decided to change some of these retention policies to lesser amount, and this will essentially help the performance and the space usage. But of course, these are buttons which you can click and change over anytime you want. The big one for me, and being a dashboard guy, is allowing you to disable coloring in a scoreboard widget. Now, if you've used the scoreboard widget, you know that you have to either use a red, a yellow, or a green color to depict a number. However, it does not make sense when you're trying to show things like inventory, such as number of hosts or number of clusters, to depict it to the color, because that color doesn't really matter or becomes irrelevant. And that has been taken care of with this particular release. So we'll talk about the scoreboard widget, and I'll show you what I'm really talking about over here as we go through the deck. The last one is the update process. So I know that there are quarterly cadence of vROps releases which are coming out, and it's difficult for customers to keep up with those releases. But I think VMware has heard, and they've made the upgrade process much faster. In fact, with some of the testings which has been done internally, it's turned out to be 40% faster. And of course, it depends on the size of the environment as well. But you should be able to move now from one version to a newer version faster as compared to what you were doing in some of those 6.0, 6.1 releases. Yes, this is a test which is from 6.4 to 6.5. So hence, if you're on a version prior to that, then you would still have time-taking upgrade processes. Hence, I would appreciate or recommend that if you could move on to 6.4, 6.5 as soon as possible to get all these benefits, plus to have a cluster which performs better as compared to what it was before, then it's highly recommended. Okay, let's just look at each of the scale performance enhancements which we spoke about earlier. So with each vROps node, you can now scale up the memory twice, which basically means that without adding any more nodes, you can compensate for any unplanned objects which you're trying to monitor. Hence, it basically means that you really do not have to move from, let's say, medium to large or large to extra large unless you hit the limit on CPU or memory for the next size. So this will help you making sure that you can get extra out of your existing deployment and monitor more resources. So this process is simple. You take the cluster offline, you shut down the nodes, you increase the memory, and then power on everything, and it'll automatically pick up the new memory changes and allocate the extra memory to various different processes which are running within your vROps nodes. Things like analytics, things like Java heap, collector memory, everything basically just goes up by the proportion of memory change which you have done. From a scale and performance enhancements perspective, you can see that now you have an extra large node, which I was talking about earlier. You can basically have a 24 vCPU with 128 GB worth of RAM size of extra node, and it can actually do 40,000 objects by just a single node. And you can see that this is a huge enhancement because there are customers who do not want to run multiple nodes, as Simon mentioned, and hence they have an opportunity now to just go ahead and deploy a single node and monitor large-scale environments. Most of the environments with 5,000 to 10,000 VMs or maybe a little more fit into a single node itself. So that's something which is new with this specific release. I would probably jump on to the sizing guide quickly to have a look at what you get now. And of course, the sizing guide has already been enhanced with the new version. So that's the KB link where you need to go to get the sizing spreadsheet, which you can use to size your infrastructure just to make sure that you have the best performance possible out of your vROps application. You can see here that the extra large node has been added. And with this, you'll be able to meet most of the use cases around having number of objects which you want to deploy in your environment. We'll just go ahead and move on to the next one, which is the automated upgrade of EPOps agent. So with the EPOps agents available to be upgraded out of the admin UI itself, you will not only be able to upgrade them, but also be able to look at the summary in terms of how many agents were upgraded, how many failed to upgrade because of some environmental issues, or if there were timeouts around any of these agents when we were trying to upgrade them. The good thing is that it is simplified and it's in the UX itself now, and it's all automated with just few clicks. You can also do agent rollback, or the agent rollback will actually automatically happen if there is an upgrade failure, which is good because you do not really want to go ahead and stop monitoring while the upgrade fails in some specific cases. So these are all the options which are now available within the UI, and you have logging available within the UI which tells you what has upgraded and what has not. Okay. All right, so this is something which I was talking about before, where you can now do content management more easily. So you can, if you have multiple vROps instances with same grouping criteria, then you will be able to just export the custom groups out of one instance and import them into other. And it's as simple as export, import, because we just create a JSON file like for any other content which we have in vROps. So I have a bunch of use cases which I'm already working on with this particular feature, because now my dashboards which require a specific custom group to be created, I can eliminate those manual steps and just input one step of importing a custom group and then importing the dashboard straight away. So that's there now with 6.5 release out of the box. Okay, so my most favorite feature, because I like to troubleshoot, is around enhanced troubleshooting, wherein you can now go ahead and add custom groups and add custom metrics or metrics to those particular groups in a single drag and drop. So if you look at the screen, you just basically go ahead and select any object, let's say a virtual machine in this case, which is a SQL node, and then click on all metrics, and you'll see this blue wheel icon where you can add a new group. With 6.4 release, we did add 5 custom groups, CPU, disk, memory, network, and storage. And now you can actually add your own custom group and drag and drop the metrics which you want to be added to those specific custom groups. And once you do that, as soon as you double click on that custom group, it will automatically all the metrics on a single pane, and you do not really have to go ahead and do a lot of troubleshooting, or you do not really have to do a metric finding activity, which is, in my opinion, is a great help. I do have some custom groups which I've created in my environment, and I'll probably run you through those. I also wrote a blog post around what custom groups you should have for troubleshooting simple scenarios of CPU, memory, disk, and network across virtual machines, ESX servers, and clusters. So if you get an opportunity, or if you're not sure what metrics to get, you can get those KPIs from the blog. The blog is vExpress, and you should be able to get those. I shared the link at the end of the presentation anyways. Okay, I think I can take a pause right now. And Simon, do you have any questions on the chat window which you want to answer right now, or do you want me to keep going?
We've got no questions so far, although I did ask if anybody was using EPO in anger, as in a sort of production. Somebody's replied and said they're using it currently 1,400 VMs, so that's good to see. I would imagine the automated ability to update the EPO may be of interest to them. It depends on how they're deploying the agents, of course. But yeah, but no other questions at the moment, mate. Carry on.
All right, awesome. Okay, all right, so big one. Simon's favorite, actually, troubleshooting with logs. So now if you look at the vROps screen here, you can see two additional tabs here. One of them is Log Insight, which basically means that this is the first step of bringing vROps and Log Insight in context. So it simply means that if you have a Log Insight instance running in your environment, then you can add that Log Insight instance directly to vROps, and you will be able to launch the Log Insight instance within vROps environment. It doesn't stop to that. You can actually go ahead and select a particular object and view the logs of that particular object by using the logs menu right from the same screen. I think I do have the example that you were always able to forward alerts from Log Insight to vROps. But now you can actually view those alerts in context as well and go and look at those logs which have generated those specific alerts, because now you are literally in the same page looking at both metrics and logs. Let me just go ahead and show you some more stuff. So with Log Insight, you have another dashboard, or you have another view which can actually now point to all the dashboards of Log Insight itself. Now, so the use case is that if you're not just satisfied with the dashboard which you have created from a metrics perspective, then you will be able to look at the logs dashboard as well. I think what will be cool to see is that if you can make dashboards which is a mix of metrics and logs together. If somebody in VMware is hearing, and I'm sure that that would be something which would make things more easier for somebody who's troubleshooting issues, and everything can come together in a single context. But right now, if you want, you can view your Log Insight dashboards right from vROps itself, which is this particular screen. Another thing which I was talking about is that now you have a launch from New Logs tab, which you can see. So in this case, I have a IIS web server which I have selected, and as soon as I click on the logs button, I will be able to see a log screen, and it will automatically filter logs based on that particular web server. And you can see that that particular web server name or UUID is being passed to Log Insight, and now I can see all the events which are happening on that particular virtual machine from a logs perspective. So same screen, you're looking at alerts from vROps, and at the same time, when you click on logs, you switch over context to look at logs from that particular virtual machine. I think it's very powerful, and hopefully in this year, we will be able to demo certain use cases where you're trying to solve problems when logs are required, and where logs are required, and we'll be able to solve that end-to-end use case of fixing a VM slow issue or an ESX issue or a data store issue for that matter. All right, let me just go on to the next one. So if you're wondering how would you go ahead and integrate Log Insight with vROps, the answer is it's very simple. You can basically go ahead and use the out-of-the-box management pack, which is available within every instance of vROps, so you don't have to install any management packs, which is kind of sweet. And then you go ahead and point out to your LI instance, which you want to link with your vROps instance. So if you remember, if you have worked on Log Insight, you would know that within Log Insight, you point your Log Insight instance to a vROps instance. You continue to do that. And once you've done that, you are able to forward data from Log Insight to vROps. But for this integration to work, or for you to view Log Insight within vROps, you need to come here and do this tiny bit of configuration to enter the FQDN of the Log Insight server, or the IP address for that matter. And as soon as you save this setting, you will automatically have the logs button populating logs for those particular objects for which you're already collecting logs within Log Insight. Okay, the next one, business management. So this is something which I spoke about earlier. Now, vROps, where you see the operations data, and this is basically for the VI admin, and there's always a question about what's the cost behind running this infrastructure or running these VMs. And this is more for the capacity and the business people who want to understand the costing factor around each of their virtual machines and the infrastructure which they're running. So if you are a customer who's running vRBC in your environment, then you will be similar to Log Insight. You'll be able to just add business management page within Log Insight or within vROps. Now, one thing to understand or learn is that just like the Logs tab which you get with Log Insight, today you do not get a costing tab. So don't start looking for that. But what you is that you can jump onto business management and look at the costing constructs which you have already built in your environment. So the vROps and vRBC is one from an integration standpoint and from a UI perspective, but I think there's still work needs to be done around how costing can be a part of operations straight away in the vROps screen. But I like the direction, at least, in terms of where we're going. So Simon, any of your customers using vRBC?
I've only known of one that was using it, to be honest. So most of my customers are either vROps or Log Insight users. Not so many with vRBC at the present.
So what I have experienced with some of the large customers who are interested in costing is that they are using a chunk of data coming in from vROps into vRBC. And then using that utilization data, they go ahead and build up reports around costing for various virtual machines. And the biggest use case which I see is where they want to see how many dollars they can save when they reclaim waste resources. And the beauty with this coming together is, and I foresee is this as I click on a VM or I click on a cluster and I can immediately get the cost which I am paying to run that particular cluster, and at the same time I get the cost of how much I can reclaim from that cluster and what will be the dollar value of that. I think that is a use case which I keep hitting PMs with, and it'll be good to see that in the product. I'm not sure if it's the next release, but I think that'll be something which will make a lot of difference for especially the people who are higher up in the business area of things, and they can immediately transform the utilization and the capacity into costs. All right, moving on, some more screenshots around how you can do that integration. So you come to business management and tab, and for the first time you need to just click on that link, and once you do that, from every login thereafter, you will be able to see your business management tool within vROps, and you can see all the tabs which you have pre-populated or configured within vRBC. That's about the integration of UI between vRBC and vROps. Okay, so coming to the integration piece, you use the out-of-the-box management pack, which is available, and just point that to your vRBC instance. So you really don't have to install a bunch of tools or do scripting around it. It's all out of the box. Just go ahead and click on the configure button to configure that instance of vRBC which you're running. All right. With that, we've actually covered a lot in terms of what are the new features within that particular release. And now we look at some of the improvement areas which can help some of your existing use cases which you might be blocked on because of scale limits or because of the way the widgets work. So let's look at the first one, which is the predictive DRS scale. So as I was saying earlier, you could only do 4,000 VMs or earlier, but now that's supported, so you don't have to worry about PDRS anymore. You can basically have PDRS on any vROps or PDRS working on any size of cluster which you have in your environment. To be honest, I've not seen many clusters with 4,000 VMs or more, but if you have any, you'll be able to run that simply in your environment by using vROps and PDRS together. Colorless scoreboard widget. So if you use dashboard, and I know everybody uses dashboard in vROps, you know that for scorecard widget or scoreboard widget, you need to show color for every metric which you're depicting. Unfortunately, that might not be true or might not be good for some of the metrics such as inventory. So if you want to show how many data centers you have or how many clusters you have in your environment, you might not be necessarily wanting the color next to it. So that option is now available, and I've had instances where I was showing a dashboard to a director of DevOps around the inventory they have in their 10 different environments through a single dashboard. And his question was, why do I see a green color next to 15,000 VMs which I'm running? I had no answer, but I went back and made certain requests to make sure that we can give an option which is colorless, which basically means that you'll be able to build something like this in a scorecard widget. So this is a screenshot from one of my environments where you can see that I'm now able to give a summary very neatly without having put in colors in place. So this is a great use case, especially for somebody who's trying to build dashboards. One thing which you should know, and I came to know when I was working on the new feature, is that the XML interactions do not work with colors right now, or do not work with no color option. What I basically mean is that if you're creating an XML to pass on metrics from one widget to a scoreboard widget, then you would need to specify colors, or the XML would automatically do it for you. However, you do not still have the option to say the color option is none. So you will still see colors if you're using interactions with scoreboard. So if you have made a static scoreboard, though, like what you see on the screen, then you will be able to make a colorless widget. And that's where this setting comes into picture. So here is the scoreboard widget, which I'm trying to create. And I'm putting in CPU capacity remaining metric for one of the hosts or clusters in this case, or sorry, vCenter server in this case. And you can see that I will now be able to use the color method option, where instead of using custom or symptom state, I can select none. And once I do that, I will not see any color next to that particular widget or box for that particular metric. All right, some of the options around are webhook shims, and I have this quote from Alan over here, who's a senior consulting architect with CMBU, and he basically he uses shims for everything, and that's something which you can do now with vROps. So you can basically use the orchestrator shims or ticketing shims or ServiceNow shims or social cost shims or any of your DevOps tools to forward alerts to these pages directly, and you can pick and choose what alert definitions you want to forward to various different platforms, as you see on the right-hand side. And this basically helps you for creating problem alerts, which you want to show up probably, let's say, on an internal messaging platform or PagerDuty, for instance, or any of your, or Slack if you're using that for that matter. You can also do that for ServiceNow. So, for instance, if you have an alert where you know that a particular site is down, and that alert can actually go to your ServiceNow instance straight away and can come up as a banner, and people can view it and you know, can go ahead and tell you that, and the user will know that, okay, there is a data center which is down at this moment, and hence their applications are impacted, et cetera, et cetera. So there could be different use cases which you can build around it. But the good news is that most of these shims are now available on GitHub. I'll probably just jump over to the GitHub link. So these are some for login site, which work for vROps as well. And you can get to that GitHub link and get those webhook shims and deploy them in your environment if you need to. And we'll be able to forward alerts to various different systems which you see. Some of them are the sample endpoints which I've mentioned over here on this slide. Similar to these shims, you have a specific shim for orchestrator plugins as well, which basically makes it easier for you to go ahead and run workflows within vRealize orchestrator by pushing that through the REST API and sending it using the orchestrator shim into the orchestrator itself. So that's another very powerful use case where you can do automated actions against a particular object on a basis of an alert. All right, so some of those are links. Unfortunately, I didn't put the full link over there, but what I can do is I will be sharing this slide deck in a raw format on our blogs, so you will be able to get access to those links, and you can use those webhooks for doing various different things which are available through those blog posts on this particular slide. Okay. I think I have a couple of more before we jump into the live demo, just keeping an eye on the clock as well. So you have a REST notification plugin. So now you will be able to do a put or a post on a REST API endpoint, and you can send a JSON or XML payload. So if you have not played with the vROps API, we have done a session last year on how do you access the vROps API and how do you run simple payloads against various different options within the API. And that session is something which you want to go to for your 101 session on learning about APIs. We've taken it a step further in this case. In this case, you can basically go ahead and use the REST API to send payloads to different systems. This is a VMware proprietary, and hence the payload is proprietary to vROps as well. In this case, you can see that we are sending it to an endpoint, which is an orchestrator, and we are sending a JSON payload from vROps itself. Okay, the last but not the least, the upgrade checker. So with vROps 6.5 on the admin UI, we have an upgrade checker which actually goes ahead and checks all these things to ensure that you are healthy in your current environment before starting the upgrade. Now, this is very powerful and useful. I know this is not used every day, but whenever you're doing your upgrade, you can feel secure about the fact that if you have any of these issues in your environment, then vROps will tell you beforehand, and hence you have the opportunity to solve these problems before you go ahead and click that upgrade button, because any of these issues or these checks, if they fail and we do not notify you, then it might mean that you might have a longer upgrade process or a potential failure during the upgrade process. So this is very powerful, and I especially like this feature because this reduces the number of customer pain points when they're trying to upgrade from one version to another. With that, I think that was my last slide. I ran through 27 slides pretty quickly. So I'll take a pause here and listen to your views, Simon. And if you have any questions, then probably we can go through them before we jump into a demo.
Yeah, we got one good question from a chap called Warren. He's asking, he's new to vROps, and he's asking, is there an easy way to deploy the endpoint agents through the console or from vROps? Now, initially I would have said, you know, you have to refer to the documentation. But with the automated upgrade of EPO, does that just manage the upgrade aspect of the agents, or can you actually now do new deployments of the agents from vROps?
That's a great question. So, Warren, the answer to that is that you can just do upgrades today. But I think where this is going is you might see options around installing or deploying new agents from the UI as well. But at this moment, the option is only to go ahead and upgrade the existing agents. For installing the agents, you would still refer to the documentation as Simon mentioned, and you can basically go ahead and use scripts to deploy these agents in your existing environment, or use any of your push mechanisms which you might be running in your environment to push those agents through multiple VMs. It's just the upgrade problem which is solved with this release, but I'm pretty sure the installation problem should be solved as well. And I don't have details on that, but I can tell you that people are working on it.
That's good to hear. Another, not so much a comment, just something that I'm going to say. The upgrade checker there towards the end that you were showing, that's super useful. I don't know how many of you are customers or how many of you are consultants who go out in the field to your customers. But when you're doing upgrades of vROPs, especially large clusters, which are large nodes, which, when you're pushing the update option of a new pack, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, even if you've got backups and you've taken a snapshot of all the nodes. You really want that to just work. So having this sort of validation beforehand gives you a little bit of confidence before you push the big red button to make it go, because it can be a reasonably lengthy process. I know that the update process has been improved by 40%, but when you're doing these larger clusters, nobody likes downtime and everybody wants it to be smooth. So anything that can alleviate the stress and the pain from that is all good. So that's great.
All right, awesome, great. Okay, with that, let's see what's the next slide. I think I have it for the demo. All right, there you go. That's Simon for you. V4. Okay, so let me just pull up my vROps instance over here. Simon, just let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, looking good.
All right, awesome. So here I have a vROps instance running in my lab. Let's just go ahead and look at the version. We're running on 6.5, the GA build this moment. And you can see that right on the screen itself, I have these two options for Log Insight and Business Management, which I can click on to immediately jump on Log Insight and Business Management. But before I do that, probably want to show you some of the features around the export, import of the groups. So if you jump into an environment and you look at your custom groups, you can actually select any custom group now and simply go ahead and export or import that particular custom group right on the box itself. And similarly, you can go ahead and create custom group metrics, which I was talking about. So if I jump into host and clusters, and let's see if I select a particular cluster, in this case, and go into all metrics, I now have the option of these custom groups which are already created out of the box. So I double click on these, and I can see all the CPU metrics which are important for at a cluster level. And similarly, I have all the memory metrics over here, which I can list in a single click. So if you are in a God mode, which I call a God mode because if you're in all metrics, it means that you've exhausted all your options to troubleshoot. And if you've reached here, it basically means that you're now trying to go deep into the product to get metrics which matter to you for that particular problem which you're trying to solve. What you can simply do is click here and click on Add Group. So let's say I want to call it Cluster KPIs. Oops. And click OK. And as soon as I do that, I have a new metric group right over here. It's empty right now. But what I can do is I can go into all metrics, and let's say I want CPU capacity remaining in the KPI for that cluster. I simply drag and drop it, and now I have it. And I can say, well, it's the provision capacity on this cluster. I have these two metrics now. And now I go into any cluster in the environment. Let's say I go into the second cluster. In this case, I can see these KPIs are already available for me. So I can just double click on this, and I can get those metrics right out of the box into my screen where I want to troubleshoot them, or where I want to have a look at them to troubleshoot further. So this is a very powerful feature. I actually built up a whole list which you can use. As promised, I will just go jump into the blog, do some promotion. And this is a blog post which you can screenshot if you want to. And here I teach you how to create it. And at the same time, I give you some KPIs which might be helpful. So in case of virtual machines, these are the KPIs which you can use to build your VM KPIs group. And then similarly for host system, you can use the ones which are listed here, and similarly for cluster. I mean, it literally doesn't matter what you're using because it depends on your specific use case in terms of how you want to troubleshoot. But yeah, you have that option now, and you can do it right on the UI. I think there's a question from Joe. Is it available to everyone or is it personal? I have not tested that, but that's a great question. I would probably put it back to you, Joe, if you want to test it and let us know over an email. So I think the question was that can you create a custom group at a global level? What I've done is I've created this as an admin. So I would later on log in as a AD user and check if I'm able to see these or not. I'm not 100% sure whether it's global or not. Okay, so and then I would probably jump on to the next option over here, which is around logs. Click on logs, and oops, and the demo bot is not happy. Let's see if my login site is integrated. Seems it's not. Let's see. Okay, I would log in for the first time to log inside here to make sure that I have that integration going on. And now since I have logged into the login site, when I go back, I should be able to see it again. There you go. So that's the first time step which you need to do. So basically you need to go and accept the certificate on the browser so that next time around you can see login site in context within vROps, which you can see in this case. So now I go back to my cluster and select logs. Now it's basically searching for that specific cluster, and all the logs which I'm getting are for that specific cluster now. So I can see all the event types, I can see the events, and you can see that the system has already filtered out the vCenter ID and the cluster name for me to make sure that I'm pointed to specific logs which I'm looking at. And as I said earlier, once you are in login site or once you're on this page, you can simply browse through and look at various different sets of data as you move around. So you can come here and now look at the dashboards which are pertaining to login site and have a look at various different things which you would want to from a log standpoint. As I said earlier, a good thing would be that I could have a dashboard here which can show events and log events and metrics together on a single page, make it more powerful. All right, let's see where we are. Okay, so these are a couple of those options which I was talking about. Let's see if I have the other global setting options. So here's the global setting options, which I discussed earlier. So you now have the option, or you can see that the object history and action history in this case is set to specific days. Now, if you have upgraded from an existing version of vROps to 6.5, then your settings won't change. If you're deploying a new 6.5 version, then your settings would be as what we demoed today or showed today on the PPT, and they will all change based on the new vROps 6.5 release. But you always have the option to come over here and change it back to what you want to change it back to, basically. Okay. With that, I don't think there are any other changes which have happened to the out-of-the-box dashboard, so I would not go there. But at this moment, I think we've covered what we wanted to cover today. If you have any specific questions, then I think we can open the lines right now or open the chat window, and please go ahead and ask your questions. I mean, anything would you want to look through or have a look at?
Just thinking out loud, really. No, I mean, I've already got it up and running in my home lab. I have a few customers that are sort of preparing to make the jump to 6.5. Mm-hmm. For some customers, vROps is now integral to their monitoring and alerting framework, so it becomes a critical app. I've got a question there. How do you update the agent? Do you want to go with that, Sonny?
Yep. So basically what you do is, so in this environment, I'm not running any agents at this moment. It's just a lab system. But if I go into the admin UI, so this is where you would see your agent upgrade options. So you can see my vROps folder is empty, so I don't have any options around here. But if we want, we can actually run a session right on vROps itself to show agent upgrade and stuff like that. So that's a good feature request, I would say, or a session request.
I think it would. Yeah, I think it would be good because is why I asked the question earlier if anyone was using EPO, because it's not new necessarily to vROps, but people aren't always just going to pick up new features immediately. Sometimes people like to wait for them to mature or other reasons. But clearly people are now using it. So yeah, maybe, even if we don't have a whole session on EPO, we could certainly have a session that includes EPO, especially with the new upgrade options. That would be good to showcase that.
All right, sure. We can do that. Okay, with that, do we have any other questions on the chat window?
Not so far. We can give it another 30 seconds, and otherwise we can
I'll just go ahead and unmute everyone as well in case they want to go ahead and ask questions. Just stop sharing for a second. Unmute all. I want to quickly jump back to the deck as well.
Mute off.
Yeah, today's not the 23rd. I'm assuming that's when it downloaded. Yeah.
There you go. Some music going on. So that's the link to the survey, and I will put that on the chat window for everyone as well, just to make sure that you will be able to respond to that survey. And please go ahead and put in your request for sessions coming forward. We are doing certain sessions on Blue Medora, which will be our next session around mid-April, where we'll talk about management packs.
The respondents guys and see.
All right. And there's a question from Rohan that can we upgrade from vROps 6.1 to 6.5 directly? The answer is yes. I believe 6.2 is the minimum requirement for upgrading to 6.5, so you should be able to upgrade that.
Okay.
Cool, man. Thanks.
All right, and here is the link to the survey and link to our blog.
I take them every month.
All right. So, Simon, do you have any closing comments before we close this session?
No, I think 6.5, everyone that I've spoken to that knows the product is really pleased with the release and the enhancements. It's obviously leading on to other things which people will always speculate on, but yeah, it's looking good. Very happy. Looking forward to the next session with Blue Medora.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you for your time, and thank you, everyone, for staying on. And if you have any feedback, use that link, and we'll see you in the next session. Keep an eye on the blog posts, and you should be able to get the recording for this one if you'd like to review this and use some of the options which we have discussed today. Thank you once again. I give you 7 minutes back from the session to your day. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.